Okay, thank you so much for returning promptly from our break, and I couldn't be more delighted to have with us today and to be able to introduce to you one of my all-time favorite people in the world.
You were delighted they were back from break.
Well, that too. This is Matt Belcher of Belcher Homes, one of the primo builders here in the greater St. Louis area.
Oh,
But
shucks.
here's what I know. But here's what I love so much about Matt. Matt was instrumental in writing the green building guidelines for the local Home Builders Association here in St. Louis. When the National Association of Home Builders decided that they wanted to have their own green building standard, guess what they started with for their green building standard? They came to St. Louis, lifted what Matt and some others had written here, and began their green building standard from this guideline. So this is from the mouth of the gods.
Thanks, Mom. Well, we were fortunate here in St. Louis. I'd served on, and still do, serve on NAHB's green building and energy subcommittees, we'd put the guidelines together, NHB green building guidelines together, and we started our local HBA program 4 years ago. Matter of fact, October 10th will be 4 years. We launched it. Our local, as Trudy mentioned earlier, our local gas utility amazingly stepped up and volunteered to be a third-party verifier. We wanted, with our program, we wanted a credible source, an independent verifier. We were looking at putting out a request for proposal from HERS raters or home inspectors, and they stepped up with their engineers to do it. They developed a really nice checklist, which then evolved to become the checklist. If you go to nahbgreen.com, you can look at, there's two sets of checklists. There's a checklist for the National Green Building Guidelines, which is kind of a version of what our verifiers here locally developed. They also have invested a lot of money in developing the National Green Building Program based on the standard. And there's the checklist for that also. You can go in, you can create your own login, and go in and do a mock checklist if you want to see what's in there, see what's involved with the radon portion, Chapter 9, the Interior Environmental Quality chapter of the standard. In Zone 1, it's mandatory. You install mitigation. In Zone 2, where we are, you get 10 points, which is a huge chunk of points in the checklist to install at least a passive radon system. My experience, somebody asked earlier how long I've been building green. Really, I was fortunate. I grew up in the business. My dad worked for a large lumber company here in town, a privately owned company that's no longer in business, but he also built homes on the side. That's where I learned to build, and he used a lot of techniques, materials that are now considered green, and they weren't his idea. They were just good practices that he had learned in his involvement in the industry. The benefit now is the components I can build a home with are so much, and the practices are so much better. I can do a better job building now than I could just 4 or 5 years ago, as these green building programs and these other programs such as Energy Star and the new indoor air program. We started our first house. We're building under, matter of fact, we're building under the national standard, under Energy Star and the new indoor air quality program, because my HERS rater verifier is certified to verify under all those programs. So he sends me a list. What do you want to, which of these programs do you want to build to? And I just checked them all. Because really, once you get into one good, credible program, a lot of the things you're doing span all the checklists. That checklist you have for the IAP program, I'm doing all that stuff already. So it's easy for me to reach out. The key is, especially with builders, a lot of builders they don't understand it. There's a lot of people that haven't been in the business that long, and there's a lot of people that have left the business because of the downturn. As things pick up again, you're going to see a lot of fractionalization, a lot of guys getting back into the business. The building business is different, as Trudy alluded to, and David also. When this business comes back, the techniques, the processes, the codes are going to be different. We've gone through a whole code cycle now during this downturn. The 2009 International Residential Code, the 2009 International Energy Conservation Code are drastically different from just the 2006 codes. So there's going to be quite a bit of change and shock. And builders need to understand that. I was a code official back in the late 80s and early 90s. I worked for St. Louis County as a code official. And that was after our last energy crisis in the late 70s, early 80s, when the Model Energy Code was first introduced. And they required buildings be built tighter, but they didn't really pay much attention to how they were constructed or the indoor air quality. And so all of a sudden, voila, in the 90s, we have rampant mold issues. New England Journal of Medicine put an article out about the spike in respiratory illness issues. The dirty little secret nobody ever talks about, which is radon, the second leading cause of lung cancer behind cigarettes. Nobody discusses that because there's really nobody you can go out and sue over. There was. Now, with the promulgation of information out there, builders are going to be liable for things they do in the building. They were liable for mold and things like that. It comes down to education. We're getting back, those that don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it, as they say. We're getting right back into that same mode where the Energy Star, the building code itself, even the 2009 International Residential Code, as I said earlier, has verbatim right out of the NAHB Green Building Guidelines, the checklist for sealing the house up, doing testing, things like that. That's all being negotiated on different local levels around the country as to how much of that we're going to do. Well, that's kind of a thing you can't, it's like being pregnant. You can't just be a little bit. You got to do it all or do none of it. But builders need to understand, and they need to be educated, and it's kind of a conquest I'm on. You build a house tight. The mantra is build it tight and ventilate it right, but you have to build it right when you build it tight. We discussed earlier about moisture. Physics, wet always wants to go to dry, warm always wants to go to cold, and it will move through walls. You can do things to stop it, drastic things to stop it, which are very expensive, or you can reduce it and handle how it comes through there. We've gone to, we try to build into the upper echelons of the green building standards. We build to Energy Star, and the equipment we use is made for that. And we had a list, David had a list earlier of all those subcontractors that are on your job, which includes an environmental person. Rule number one in the guidelines or any program is to establish a knowledgeable team. That's the knowledgeable team, and same as a radon mitigation person, the home inspector, the HERS rater, they're all part of the team. We just put a foundation in for a house. We backfilled it, thank God, before the rain Friday. And we're building, that's the house I was talking about. We're building under the National Green Building Program, EPA's Indoor Air Quality Program, Energy Star, just because we're already doing all those things anyway. We're doing a wall, a 2x6 frame wall with the studs on 2-foot centers. When you do that, you have less thermal breaks in the wall. You use about the same board feet of lumber as if you did 2x4s on 16-inch centers. But it allows you to spread that out, get a thicker wall, more insulation. We looked at the design the architect came up with. It's a prairie-style design that has a clear story in the middle of it. And they didn't really have a good way to ventilate that roof as it ran into the clear story. And I was concerned about, getting air on that roof sheeting. Well, we decided to eliminate that problem by going ahead and insulating the attics. We were talking about that earlier. And it's a low, small attic, not a lot of square feet. We're going to insulate that. My clients decided to go ahead and insulate the walls with foam, with icing. And with our ceiling package, now we're going to have a very tight house. And then they decided, they're from Austin, Texas, they wanted a plaster finish on the outside. Now they've decided to go with EPAs, exterior insulating finish system. So not only do we have foam insulation with fewer thermal breaks, a good sealing package on the inside, now we have continuous insulation all the way around the outside of the envelope. So I called my HERS writer, who also does my building testing. I called my HVAC guy and told him, I said, look, ventilation, that's our number one problem right here. We need to have the proper ventilation. You alluded earlier about the humidity in the house. You know, St. Louis, this part of the country, is somewhat of a challenge to build in because we have high humid summers. We were lucky this year. And then we have cold winters. So we have, you know, kind of the extremes to be built in. But a lot of the equipment we use, we've gone primarily to geothermal for heating and cooling. Most geothermal units come with humidistats in them. You can put, if you do a high efficient HVAC system, you can put that humidistat in there. But you need to know your occupant load, their lifestyle. This is all part of the communication process with your clients. The thing you guys need to know, I rely, my carpenter sub knows his business, my electrician knows, I depend on him to know what he's doing. Because to me, electricity it's magic. You flip a switch over there and a light over here comes on. You know, I hire the guys that are skilled at their craft, and I depend on them to do what they say they're gonna do. Now, when I was starting in the business, superintendent I worked for, he says, you don't get what you expect, you get what you inspect. So you know, especially when the liability comes back on me, you know, we do those sorts of things. We have humidity testers, we test products before we cover them up, all our wood, before we insulate those walls. We'll test the humidity levels in there to make sure, before we put flooring down, you know, we test the sheathing to make sure we're not trapping moisture in the house. It doesn't take, you know, it doesn't take any time at all, and it gives us that pause to kind of do that quality check too, to make sure the ceiling's done properly, properly. But I equate the same thing to mitigation. You guys know what it takes to do what you're doing. It's easier for me to engage one of you in the process, just like Trudy, that already know what you're doing, instead of me going to educate myself as to how to do it. Now, you know, I was fortunate that I was invited by St. Louis County Health Department a few years ago to go to DC and take a course in residential radon new construction. And it was an eye-opener. I thought I knew about it. That was an eye-opener. I mean, I had done a lot of passive systems. I will not build another house again without one. But I know most builders don't. That's the thing. You need to reach out and do education to them. I was looking at your agenda for the meetings here today, and I thought, man, I bet there's a whole big pile of builders that would love to sit in on some of that training for framing and things like that. With our local green building program through our Home Builders Association, and we have local U.S. Green Building Council chapter that most of us are all members of also. You know, we do a lot of this sort of training on different aspects of building, but this is where you guys can get involved with that. If you're in an area that has a local Home Builders Association, join it. Most HBAs now, who's from Atlanta? Somebody was talking about Atlanta earlier. Atlanta has a tremendous green building program down there. And, you know, get involved with those guys. We welcome people, especially guys in different trades that know what their craft is. Man, we love to get them on board with us. Well, you know, I'm chair of our local program. We get guys in there and just ask them, when do you want to do a training program? What month? You know, we'll just line them up. Every other month we do a training for all our council. And it gets your ability to trade your information to train, but also it's a great marketing opportunity. So, and you get to have those conversations. You get to know what builders, you know, the whole thing was fairly easy for custom builders. I'm primarily a custom builder. It was easier for me to get my hands around the whole green building thing. And a lot of guys, they're already pretty much there. It just, you know, they need a little bit better defined information, which these checklists give you. The materials, 5 years ago, I'd spent a lot of time researching information online to make sure I wasn't putting formaldehyde-laden materials in my homes and things like that. Now, all the manufacturers are manufacturing to this market, so it's easier to find, it's easier to get the information, It removes some of that liability off of me, that I don't have to do that research. So if you go in and get engaged with these guys, builders need to be educated. That's what will get them there. The bigger the builder, we were discussing some of the big builders in the country. We have a good sized handful of production builders here in the St. Louis area. It takes them longer to get on board because of their process. They're like manufacturers. They just manufacture out in a subdivision instead of a plant. It's hard for them to shut down and retool. I think Trudy in her program was talking about the salesperson. They're kind of at the mercy of that person that's sitting out there today on a Sunday afternoon in their display home selling something that they may not necessarily know what it costs them to build. I can see the salesperson come in Monday morning and say, hey, I sold 2 geothermal systems this weekend, and the guy thinking, I have no idea what that's going to cost us. It's that magnified times the 90 different subcontractors you have on your project. So, the more information, and it takes them a while to get their processes down, get their salespeople trained. But we have 3 production builders in town now that are all building in our green building program. And the nice thing is, the first guy in the pool made the biggest splash, but now now the competition's triggering them. So, yes.
Can I ask a question? Do you market to your clients or to your prospective buyers, or maybe it's your client that you're building for?
Yes.
Do you market that you're going to build this house to Energy Star?
Yes.
You do market.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, otherwise you're giving it away. Why not? That's why. Oh. Yeah. For the rest of the group, the question was, do I market these different things? I do. I'm fortunate. I don't do a lot of advertising. Most of the things I'm doing is by referral. And even in a down economy right now, we're very busy because of what we're doing. It's just, there's all the programs and checklists and different things we're trying to accomplish. But really, the bottom line is you end up with a high quality product. And for the biggest investment they can make, why not make it the best investment? Yeah, Trudy?
Man, I want to ask this question. Let's pretend that you're one of these guys here who's a radon professional, all right? And you're going into F&F, all right?
Yeah. Who just started building green?
How are you going to get John to buy into this radon aspect of the green building?
Well, first of all, you need to educate yourself on all the benefits, not only obviously the health benefit, but the moisture benefit is huge. That's what I probably, it's like free stuff. Yeah, we're reducing your radon levels. We're taking that air-laden moisture out from under that slab, and water's a builder's worst enemy. So all of a sudden, that thing has a little bit more value to it. Then you add in the fact that, hey, you get points either in our local green building program, the national program. Here in St. Louis, you get 10 points. That's huge. I mean, for a lot of things, you get 1 or 2. 10 points for radon mitigation.
Can you explain to me what that means for you?
For me, 10 points, the NHB Research Center is actually engaged with a couple of the national builders right now. They're actually studying their houses, their processes, and going through the point scale and monetizing those points. Because they'll take a look at this, like, if I can get 10 points for doing this $1,000 installation, well, then I don't necessarily have to look at getting 2 points for doing something that cost me $5,000. Here you're doing everything it takes to do this mitigation, and not only to do it properly, you're solving a lot of problems. The moisture problem and the radon issue. And you've got a whole lot of points. That's worth a lot of money to these guys, especially the production guys. You add $1,000 over 300 houses, $1 million here, $1 million there, pretty soon it's big bucks. And, that's how they look at it. It's bottom line. You may be adding $100 to the cost, which they gripe about, but if you can show them where that's going to pay off, the bigger the benefit and the more you do it, obviously it's exponential. Yeah, David.
Yeah, if I could add something to it, is if I'm looking at it from a builder's perspective, and let's just make the assumption that I'm building a greenhouse and I'm getting a label. that puts you, not only does it put you in a different bracket as far as the value of the product, which is a good thing, it also puts you in a different level of responsibility for what you're doing.
Exactly.
And with houses now, we can use a thermal imaging camera and look at how well you did the insulation in the house. And we can do a radon test to see if you've got a radon problem in your house. Now, in me, if I'm a builder and I'm putting a green label on my house, I damn sure don't want to see elevated radon levels in my house.
You know,
Selling a green house.
and I'll tell you what, you can already sense it now. I serve on a panel, national panel of green consultants, I think, or green experts. I hate the term expert, but for construction dispute resolution services, because you can see the attorneys lining up now. You know, for it's like, you know, I see fins. But it's very true. I mean, but this is where builders need to be educated. They need to understand, you know, when you build a house tight, it has consequences. You need to be careful what you trap your occupants in there. I'm very forthright with these clients. They're thrilled to death. This is their dream. They've been planning this house for 6 years, and they keep reminding me of that, and I was like, God, I hope I don't screw this up. But you know, it's that kind of responsibility that you have. But you know, I'm very forthright with them with the practices we do, why we do it. My contract has a damn near a whole page long description of what we do to mitigate radon, why, how, you know, really the whole synopsis. That way, it's a very clear message, and we do that with other things too, obviously. But with mold. We use a mold preventative spray. We have a guy that comes in and does that. To me, for what it costs me, it's cheap insurance. You know, if you ever have a mold problem, the whatever $400 or $500 I think it costs me, because they do it in conjunction with the bio-based termite treatment we use. You know, if you ever have a mold issue, $400 or $500 will never buy enough aspirin to cure the headache. I guarantee you. So you know, again, it's relative. It's all relative, and that's the explanation that needs to be done. But again, builders, and we try through NHB and partnerships with EPA and Department of Energy. You know, I did my first house last year into this year under the Building America program. And I was excited about doing it because I hadn't done it before. It was easier than I thought it would be. And when I got that label to put on my clients, and showed them, you know, that track record of the energy savings and got my HERS score, and I was well into Energy Star. I mean, that was cool. And you know, that's the gauge that my clients will set against my competition. You know, when I have new clients come in, I have them talk to my old clients, and it works real well. It's hard to do that on a production scale. You got to think in those terms.